Today, I'm going to tell you the story of an Apache girl wandering near a ranch, too young to know she'd been left for dead. Ranch foreman Tom Bradley discovered little Kaya alone in the brutal desert after a military massacre destroyed her family. But the outcome exceeded all expectations. Please subscribe to our channel and comment where you're listening to this story from. Chapter 1. Lost in the Desert. The scorching Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the Red Canyon Ranch as ranch foreman Tom Bradley wiped sweat from his weathered brow. At 53, he'd seen enough desert summers to know when the heat could kill, and today was one of those days. The thermometer nailed to the barn wall read 112 degrees, and it wasn't even noon yet. Miguel. Tom called to his youngest ranch hand, a 22-year-old Mexican cowboy mending fence near the corral. Check the water troughs in the south pasture. This heat's gonna stress the cattle something fierce. Miguel Reyes looked up from the barbed wire he was splicing, his dark eyes squinting against the glare. See, Hefe, but I think we got bigger problems than thirsty cattle. Tom followed Miguel's gaze toward the distant ridge that marked the boundary of their 10,000-acre spread. Something moved in the shimmering heat waves, a small, dark figure stumbling through the sagebrush and prickly pear cacti. What in Sam Hill? Tom muttered, reaching for the binoculars hanging from a nail beside the barn door. Through the lenses, his blood ran cold. A young Apache girl, couldn't be more than 6 or 7 years old, wandered aimlessly across the brutal landscape. Her traditional dress hung in tatters, and even from this distance, Tom could see she was barely staying on her feet. Sweet Jesus, he breathed. Miguel, saddle up Lightning and Cisco. Now! The urgency in Tom's voice sent Miguel sprinting toward the horses. Tom grabbed his canteen and a blanket from the bunkhouse, his mind racing. What was an Apache child doing alone out here? The nearest reservation was 40 miles north, and the hostile bands had been driven even further into the mountains after last month's cavalry raids. Within minutes, both men were thundering across the desert floor, their horses' hooves kicking up clouds of dust that hung in the still air like smoke. The girl hadn't noticed their approach. She continued her aimless wandering occasionally, stumbling over rocks or stopping to stare at nothing with the glazed expression of someone pushed beyond endurance. As they drew closer, Tom's heart clenched. The child was in worse shape than he'd feared. Her lips were cracked and bleeding from dehydration, her dark hair matted with dust and burrs. Scratches covered her arms and legs where thorns had torn through her clothing. Most alarming of all were her eyes empty, unfocused, as if she were sleepwalking through a nightmare. Easy, little one, Tom called softly as he dismounted 20 feet away. He'd learned enough Apache phrases during his years on the frontier to attempt basic communication. We're here to help. The girl turned toward his voice, but showed no recognition, no fear, no hope, just the blank stare of someone whose spirit had been broken. Tom had seen that look before, in the eyes of cavalry survivors and settlers who'd lost everything to Indian raids. But never in a child so young. Miguel hung back, holding both horses steady while Tom approached slowly, his hands visible and empty except for the canteen. Agua, he said gently, using the Spanish word she might understand. Water. At the word, something flickered behind the girl's dark eyes. Her cracked lips moved soundlessly, and she took an unsteady step toward him. Tom knelt in the sand, uncapping the canteen and offering it to her. She fell to her knees and grabbed the water with desperate hands, drinking so fast that Tom had to gently pull it away. Slow down, sweetheart. You'll make yourself sick. While she drank in small sips, Tom studied her more closely. Her clothing, though torn and dirty, showed the intricate beadwork characteristic of Apache craftsmanship. A small leather pouch hung from a cord around her neck, possibly containing something precious to her family. But where was that family? ¿Dónde está tu familia? Tom asked, mixing Spanish with his limited Apache vocabulary. Your people? The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. Instead, she pointed vaguely toward the eastern mountains, and shook her head as if the memory was too painful to hold. Miguel dismounted and approached cautiously. Hey, Faye, look at her feet. Tom's jaw tightened as he saw what Miguel meant. The child's feet were bloody and swollen, wrapped in strips of cloth that had once been part of her dress. She'd been walking for days, maybe longer. We need to get her back to the ranch, Tom said grimly. Doc Patterson's in town, but she needs shade and food before anything else. As gently as possible, Tom lifted the girl onto his horse. She weighed almost nothing, her small body light as a bird in his arms. Miguel draped the blanket around her shoulders while Tom climbed up behind her. The ride back to the ranch was tense. The child slumped against Tom's chest, consciousness fading in and out as her body finally allowed itself to rest. Tom found himself talking to her constantly, his voice low and soothing, telling her she was safe now, that no one would hurt her. What you think happened to her? Miguel asked as they approached the ranch buildings. Tom's face was grim. Nothing good. Question is, how long has she been out there? And why is she alone? The Red Canyon Ranch sat in a protected valley. Its buildings arranged around a central courtyard for defense against both weather and potential attacks. The main house, built of adobe and timber, stood 2 stories tall with a wraparound porch that provided blessed shade. Behind it, the bunkhouse, barn, and various outbuildings created a small village in the wilderness dot as they rode into the courtyard. Tom's housekeeper emerged from the kitchen. Elena Vasquez was a 45-year-old Mexican woman whose husband had been killed in an Apache raid 3 years earlier. Despite her own tragic history with the tribe, her maternal instincts overrode any prejudice when she saw the condition of the child. Dios mío, she whispered, crossing herself. Bring her inside quickly. Tom carried the girl into the cool interior of the house, Elena clearing papers and books from the leather sofa in the front room. The child's eyes fluttered open as he laid her down, and for a moment, terror replaced the earlier blankness. Tom murmured, you're safe. No one will hurt you here. Elena appeared with a basin of cool water and clean cloths. I'll tend her wounds, she said firmly. You send Miguel for Dr. Patterson. As Tom stepped back, he caught sight of the girl's face in the lamplight. Beneath the dirt and exhaustion, he could see she would be beautiful high cheekbones, intelligent dark eyes, and the kind of quiet dignity that seemed to run in Apache bloodlines. But right now, she was just a terrified, injured child who'd somehow survived alone in one of the harshest environments on Earth. What's your name, little warrior? Tom asked softly. The girl's lips moved, barely audible. Kaya. It was the first word she'd spoken, and hearing her own name seemed to bring back a flicker of who she'd been before whatever tragedy had befallen her family. Tom nodded solemnly. Kaya, that's a beautiful name. I'm Tom, and this is Elena. We're going to take care of you. As Elena began gently cleaning the child's wounds, Tom stepped onto the porch, his mind churning with questions that demanded answers. How had this little girl survived alone in the desert? Where was her family? And most importantly, what had happened to leave her wandering like a ghost through the wilderness? Too young to understand she'd been left for dead. Chapter 2. Fragments of memory. 3 days had passed since Tom found Kaya wandering in the desert, and the little Apache girl was slowly recovering her strength. Doc Patterson had examined her thoroughly, treating her cuts and severely dehydrated condition. The old physician had been amazed she'd survived it all. That child walked at least 30 miles in this heat, he'd told Tom privately. Maybe more. Whatever happened to her family, she's got the survival instincts of someone twice her age. Now Kaya sat on the kitchen floor, playing quietly with corn-husk dolls Elena had made for her. The housekeeper had taken to the child immediately, perhaps seeing in Kaya's loss an echo of her own grief. Elena's gentle care and Miguel's patient attempts at communication in Spanish and broken. Apache had begun to coax small responses from the traumatized girl. Tom watched from the doorway as Elena prepared breakfast. The woman's movements were efficient, but tender, occasionally pausing to stroke Kaya's hair or offer her a piece of fruit. The child accepted these gestures without flinching now, though she remained largely silent. "Any word from Sheriff Martinez?" Elena asked without looking up. "From the stove. He rode out yesterday to check with the cavalry at Fort Verde," Tom replied. "Should be back today with news about Apache movements in the area." Miguel entered through the back door, his hat dusty from the morning chores. "Hey, Faye, we got visitors coming." 3 riders from the east. Tom's hand instinctively moved to his holstered Colt. Visitors were rare at Red Canyon Ranch, especially coming from the direction of the mountains where hostile Apache bands were known to operate. "Elena, take Kaya upstairs," Tom ordered quietly. As the riders approached, Tom recognized the lead horse Sheriff Carlos Martinez's distinctive palomino. The lawman was returning from Fort Verde, accompanied by 2 cavalry soldiers. Tom stepped onto the porch as the 3 men dismounted. Sheriff Martinez was a steady man in his 40s, respected for his fairness in dealing with both settlers and Apache. The soldiers wore the dusty blue uniforms of the territorial cavalry, their faces grim. "Tom," Martinez nodded. "This is Sergeant Williams and Corporal Hayes from Fort Verde. We need to talk about the girl." "What did you find out?" Sergeant Williams, a weathered man with graying temples, spoke first. "There was a raid 4 days ago. Small Apache band, maybe 15 people, camped in Hidden Valley about 40 miles northeast of here." Tom's stomach tightened. "Cavalry raid?" "Rogue operation," Williams admitted grimly. "Lieutenant Morrison took a patrol out without orders. Said he was tracking stolen cattle, but ... The sergeant's voice trailed off. "But what?" "But when Colonel Andrews sent me to investigate, we found evidence of a massacre. The camp was burned, belongings scattered. No survivors found." Martinez stepped forward. "Tom, that little girl might be the only witness to what really happened out there." Through the window, Tom could see Kaya peering down from the upstairs hallway, her dark eyes wide with something that might have been recognition at the sight of the blue uniforms. "She hasn't said much," Tom said carefully. "Just her name and a few words here and there." "We need to try," Williams insisted. "If Morrison's patrol committed atrocities, the Army needs to know." Tom considered this. The child had been through enough trauma without being interrogated by strangers, especially soldiers whose uniforms might trigger terrible memories. "Give me a few minutes with her first," Tom said finally. "If she's willing to talk, fine. But I won't have her forced." Williams nodded reluctantly. "Fair enough." Tom found Kaya in the upstairs hallway, pressed against the wall where she could see the front porch through a window. Elena stood protectively beside her. "Those men want to ask you some questions," Tom said gently, kneeling to her eye level. "About what happened to your family. But only if you want to tell them." Kaya's small hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Tom thought she would retreat into silence again. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Blue coats came. At dawn, many horses. Grandmother told us to run." Tom's heart clenched. "What happened then, sweetheart?" "I hid in the rocks with baby brother. Watched them." Her voice broke, and tears began flowing down her cheeks. Elena knelt beside her, offering comfort in soft Spanish. Tom waited patiently, knowing this might be their only chance to learn the truth. "The leader," Kaya continued, her voice stronger. "Now, had yellow hair, angry voice. He told his men to burn everything. Tom's jaw tightened. Lieutenant Morrison was known for his blonde hair and fierce temperament. Did anyone else escape? Kaya shook her head. Baby brother got sick from smoke. Couldn't breathe. I tried to help, but... She touched the small leather pouch around her neck. He died in my arms. Then I ran. The simple words carried the weight of unimaginable tragedy. A 6-year-old child had watched her family murdered, held her dying brother, then somehow found the strength to survive alone in the desert. You're very brave, Tom said softly. Your family would be proud. Downstairs, the men waited with barely concealed impatience. When Tom explained what Kaya had told him, Sergeant Williams' face darkened. Morrison's patrol reported no contact with hostiles, he said grimly. Claimed they found an abandoned camp. That's not what happened, Tom replied firmly. That child saw everything. Sheriff Martinez leaned forward. Would she be willing to testify? If we bring charges against Morrison? She's 6 years old and traumatized, Tom protested. You can't put her through a military tribunal. If Morrison murdered civilians, including children, he needs to face justice. Williams argued. The debate was interrupted by a small voice from the stairway. Kaya had crept down. Helena closed behind her. The little girl looked directly at Sergeant Williams. Will you punish the yellow-hair man? She asked in careful English. Williams knelt down, his stern expression softening. If what you've told us is true, yes, he'll be punished. Kaya studied his face for a long moment, as if weighing his sincerity. Then she nodded once, a gesture of determination that seemed far too mature for her years. I will tell the truth, she said simply. As the men prepared to leave, making arrangements for Kaya's testimony, Tom felt a mixture of pride and concern. The child was showing remarkable courage, but he worried about the cost of reliving her trauma in front of strangers. She needs support, he told Martinez quietly. I want to be there when she testifies. Of course. Tom ... The sheriff paused. What happens to her after this? She's got no family left. Tom looked at Kaya, who was accepting a cookie from Elena with the grave politeness that characterized all her interactions. The question had been weighing on his mind since he'd found her. We'll figure something out, he said finally. But deep down, Tom was beginning to realize that Kaya had already found her place. In just 3 days, she'd become part of the fabric of life at Red Canyon Ranch. Elena doted on her like a grandmother. Miguel taught her Spanish words, and Tom himself felt a protective instinct he hadn't experienced since his own daughter died. Years earlier, the girl who'd been left for dead in the desert was very much alive. And perhaps in saving her, they were all saving something in themselves. Chapter 3. The truth revealed. The military tribunal convened at Fort Verde on a scorching Thursday morning. Tom sat beside Kaya in the makeshift courtroom, a converted barracks room with wooden benches and a single table serving as the judge's bench. Colonel Andrews presided, his weathered face stern as he reviewed the charges against Lieutenant Morrison. Kaya wore a simple blue dress Elena had sewn for her, her long black hair braided neatly. Despite her composed appearance, Tom could feel her trembling slightly as soldiers filled the room. This tribunal will determine the facts regarding Patrol 7's actions on June 15th, Colonel Andrews announced. Lieutenant Morrison, you stand accused of conducting unauthorized operations resulting in civilian casualties. Morrison sat rigidly at the defendant's table, his blonde hair gleaming in the morning light. He was younger than Tom expected, maybe 25, with the kind of arrogant bearing that suggested he'd never faced real consequences. The charges are baseless, sir, Morrison replied confidently. My patrol found an abandoned Apache camp. No hostiles were present. Sergeant Williams took the stand first, describing the evidence found at Hidden Valley earned wiki-ups, scattered belongings, and signs of violence that contradicted Morrison's report. Did you find any bodies, Sergeant? The defense attorney asked. No, sir. But the camp showed clear signs of habitation when attacked. Morrison's lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, smiled smugly. Without bodies, there's no proof of casualties. Tom felt Kaya's hand slip into his as her turn approached. You don't have to do this, he whispered. Yes, I do, she replied, with quiet determination. When called to testify, Kaya walked to the witness chair with dignity beyond her years. Colonel Andrews leaned forward kindly. Just tell us what you saw, child. Kaya's voice was clear and steady. I was with my family in the Hidden Valley. 15 people. Grandparents, parents, children. We were peaceful. What happened that morning? Blue coats came when sun was rising. Many horses, many guns. The yellow-hair man, she pointed directly at Morrison. He shouted orders to burn everything. Morrison's face flushed red. She's lying. Apache children are taught to hate soldiers. Order, Colonel Andrews snapped. Continue, child. Kaya described hiding in the rocks with her baby brother, watching soldiers systematically destroy the camp and kill anyone who tried to flee. Her testimony was detailed and unflinching. My grandmother tried to surrender. She held up her hands, spoke peaceful words. The yellow-haired man shot her anyway. The courtroom fell silent. Morrison's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Where are the others now? Colonel Andrews asked gently. Dead? All dead except me. Kaya's voice remained steady, but tears streamed down her cheeks. I carried my brother into the desert, but the smoke hurt his breathing. He died on the second day. Tom watched Morrison's face during Kaya's testimony. The lieutenant's earlier confidence was cracking, replaced by nervous sweat and fidgeting hands. This is preposterous, Morrison's lawyer declared. The testimony of one traumatized child against an officer's sworn report? But Colonel Andrews had heard enough. Lieutenant Morrison, do you maintain your patrol found an empty camp? Yes, sir, absolutely. The colonel nodded to Sergeant Williams, who produced a small object from an evidence bag, a military button with distinctive markings. This was found at the campsite, sir. Standard issue cavalry button, but with a unique scratch pattern that matches buttons on Lieutenant Morrison's uniform. Morrison's face went pale. That could have been lost during routine patrol ... in the ashes of a burned wiki-up? Williams asked pointedly. The evidence was mounting, and Morrison's story was falling apart. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. I have something to add. A voice called from the back of the room. Private Jenkins, one of Morrison's own men, stepped forward. Sir, I request permission to testify. Morrison's eyes widened in panic. Jenkins, remember your oath to your commanding. Officer, my oath is to the truth, sir, Jenkins replied firmly. He was young, maybe 19, with the kind of honest face that inspired trust. Colonel Andrews nodded. Proceed, Private. Everything the girl said is true, sir. Lieutenant Morrison ordered us to attack the camp, despite seeing it was occupied by families. When some of us hesitated, he threatened court-martial. Why didn't you report this earlier? Jenkins glanced nervously at Morrison. Fear, sir. The lieutenant said we'd all hang if word got out. But listening to that little girl, I can't live with this anymore. Morrison leaped to his feet. Jenkins is lying. He's trying to save himself. Sit down, Lieutenant, Colonel Andrews ordered. Coldly, Private Jenkins continued his testimony, corroborating every detail of Kaya's account. He described Morrison's increasingly erratic behavior, his obsession with teaching the Apache a lesson, and his threats against anyone who questioned. Orders. How many casualties were there, Private? 14, sir. Men, women, children. Only the little girl escaped. The tribunal recessed briefly. When it reconvened, Colonel Andrews' verdict was swift and decisive. Lieutenant Morrison, this tribunal finds you guilty of conducting unauthorized military operations, falsifying reports, and murder of civilian non-combatants. You are hereby stripped of rank and will face court-martial for war crimes. Morrison's composure finally shattered. They were just Indians, savages. I was protecting American settlers. You murdered children, Colonel Andrews replied with disgust. Remove this man from my sight. As guards led Morrison away, he turned back toward Kaya with hatred in his eyes. This isn't over, you little. Tom was on his feet instantly, but Kaya spoke first. You cannot hurt me anymore, she said calmly. The truth protects me now. Outside the courthouse, Colonel Andrews approached Tom and Kaya personally. Young lady, your courage today ensured justice was served. What you did took tremendous bravery. Kaya nodded solemnly. My family can rest now. The colonel turned to Tom. She need ongoing protection. Morrison has supporters who might seek revenge. She have it, Tom replied firmly. Red Canyon Ranch is her home now. As they rode back through the desert, Kaya was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke. Tom, will I always be alone? Tom's throat tightened. What do you mean, sweetheart? My Apache family is gone. Your people might not accept me. Where do I belong? Tom reined in his horse and turned to face her. You belong with people who love you. Elena, Miguel, me. We're your family now. Different blood, same hearts. For the first time since he'd found her, Kaya smiled, a real smile that transformed. Her solemn little face. Different blood, same hearts, she repeated softly. I like that. The truth had been revealed and justice served. But more importantly, a lost child had found her way home. Chapter 4. Home at last. 6 months had passed since the tribunal, and Red Canyon Ranch had transformed into something neither Tom nor Kaya could have imagined. The little Apache girl who'd once wandered the desert alone now ran through the ranch yard with the confidence of someone who truly belonged. Kaya! Elena called from the kitchen door. Come help with the bread. The 8-year-old girl looked up from where she was teaching Miguel's nephew basic Apache words, her face bright with the kind of joy that had seemed impossible during those first dark days. She'd grown taller, healthier, her cheeks now full, and sun-kissed from countless hours playing outdoors. Tom watched from the porch, marveling at the change. The traumatized child he'd found in the desert had blossomed into a spirited, intelligent girl who moved between Apache traditions and ranch life with remarkable grace. She's happy, observed a familiar voice behind him. Tom turned to see Sheriff Martinez approaching, his face wearing an unusual smile. Carlos, what brings you out here? Good news, actually. Martinez settled into a chair beside Tom. Morrison was convicted at his court-martial. 20 years hard labor. Tom felt a weight lift from his shoulders, and his supporters scattered. Most folks realized they'd been following a madman. Martinez paused. There's something else. Judge Wilson in Phoenix wants to make Kaya's adoption official. Full legal custody if you're willing. Through the kitchen window, they could see Kaya standing on a stool, helping Elena knead dough. Her laughter carried across the yard as flour somehow ended up on both their noses. I reckon we're already family, Tom said quietly. Papers won't change that. But they'll protect her, Martinez pointed out. Legal adoption means no one can question her place here. That evening, Tom sat Kaya down on the porch swing to explain about the adoption papers. She listened carefully, her dark eyes serious as she processed the information. What does it mean exactly? She asked. It means you'd officially be my daughter. Same as if you'd been born to this family. Kaya was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Would I have to forget my Apache family? Never, Tom said firmly. They're part of who you are. This just means you get to have two families, the one you were born to and the one you found. Like having two names, Kaya mused. Apache name for remembering, American name for living here. Exactly like that. 2 weeks later, Judge Wilson arrived at the ranch with the necessary paperwork. He was an elderly man with kind eyes who'd presided over dozens of adoption cases, but none quite like this one. Young lady, he said to Kaya, do you understand what adoption means? It means Tom becomes my legal father, and I become his legal daughter, she replied clearly. But I keep my Apache heritage and my memories of my birth family. And you want this? Kaya looked around at the people gathered in the ranch house parlor. Elena, who'd become like a grandmother to her. Miguel, who'd taught her to ride and rope cattle. Tom, who'd saved her life and given her a home, her new family. Yes, sir. I want this very much. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. When Judge Wilson declared the adoption final, Elena burst into tears of joy. Miguel whooped and threw his hat in the air. Tom felt his own eyes moisten as he officially became father to the brave little girl who'd already stolen his heart. Congratulations, Miss Kaya Bradley, the judge said with a smile. Bradley? Kaya tested the name. Kaya Bradley. I like how it sounds. That night, they celebrated with a feast that combined Elena's Mexican specialties with traditional Apache foods Kaya had taught them to prepare. As the evening wound down, Tom found himself alone with his new daughter on the porch. Any regrets? He asked. Kaya shook her head. My Apache family lives here now, she said, touching her heart. But you're my living family. Both are important. What do you want to do tomorrow? Miguel promised to teach me to break horses, and Elena said she'd show me how to preserve peaches. Kaya grinned. Ranch work keeps me busy. Tom chuckled. Just remember, you're still a little girl. Don't grow up too fast. I grew up fast in the desert, Kaya said matter-of-factly. But here I can be a child again. That's the gift you gave me, Papa. The word Papa hit Tom like a bolt of lightning. She'd never called him that before, always using his first name. Now, with the adoption official, she was claiming him as truly hers. That's the gift you gave me too, daughter, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. As stars emerged in the vast desert sky, father and daughter sat together in comfortable silence. The girl who'd been found wandering alone, left for dead by tragedy, had found her place in the world. Not by forgetting who she'd been, but by embracing who she could become. Red Canyon Ranch was more than just her home now. It was her sanctuary. Her fresh start, her proof that sometimes the most broken things could be made whole again. In the distance, a coyote called to the moon, its voice carrying across the desert like a song of survival and hope. Kaya smiled, recognizing the sound of her homeland, blessing her new beginning. She was Apache. She was American. She was home.